Hey folks, welcome back to G for G on YouTube. Today we are wrapping up one of the last possible categories for recruiting characters within Marvel Avengers Alliance. As always, as you've seen in the past few videos, there will be links in the description to Facebook, Discord, and how to download Marvel Avengers Alliance Redux Beta 2. Before we continue, there is the disclaimer that I've been putting in the beginning of all these videos. Do not ask me anything about Beta 3. There is no release date set for it yet. Goofy is still working on it. His biggest focus right now is combat. And do not ask me anything about the mobile version of it, because there isn't one. And there most likely never will be. Got it? Get it? Good. Okay. So, I covered originally PvP and Spec Ops. And thanks to Chick Canyon or Chic Canyon, depending upon his pronunciation of it, he said Lockbox Heroes next, and I went, okay, that's actually a pretty good category. So I went ahead and did the Lockbox ones. Nobody has mentioned this. However, I came to the realization that there is one last category, and that's general release heroes. In other words, heroes that you didn't earn from a Spec Ops, you didn't earn from PvP, and you didn't earn from a lockbox. This is essentially everything else. And there's interesting news over here. I had to go to MAA Times for this, so I essentially Googled general release heroes as my cat tries to eat one of the controller wands from my Oculus Quest over here. Any VR fans out there, I happen to go up from a cardboard to a Gear VR to an Oculus Go, and now I own a Quest. It's funny how I kind of did this linear progression. Let me just move this wand out of the way before this little shitlord decides to chew on it some more. Yeah, so if there's any VR fans out there, that's my life in VR. Starting with a card, it's almost like starting off with Cyclops and ending up with Faiza Hussein in terms of character power. But so I googled general release heroes, and I went and landed MAA Times because it was hard to sort of get that as a dedicated category here on the Marvel Avengers Alliance wiki. But this is doing a bang-up job, and it was released on June 1st of 2016, so almost exactly 4 years ago. So thank you, MAA Times people. Thank you, Special Agent P3. And here is some interesting information about the general release characters. 8 in 2012, 6 and 6 in 13, 14, 8 and 15, and they said as of 6/1, 2016, not one was released. It almost makes you wonder, when did Playdom really smell the Sharpie on the wall? When did the overwhelming smell of Sharpie get to them that they made it half a year into 2016 without a general release hero? Interesting knowledge. Thank you very much, MA Times, because it's things that make you go, to quote, I think that was what CNC Music Factory way back in the day, things that make you go, Anyway, so the last thing that people had to look up for me is, I mentioned Electro looked like Kremzeek, and only one person came up with the answer to it, and that was Darth, only because he Googled it. Sadly, nobody recognized the reference offhand. I'm really disappointed because it just makes me feel old. As is things that make you go, which I'm going to say is probably CNC Music Factory. But anyway, let's get into it. So, we're going to start off with Black Panther back in 2012. So, we're working on the 2012 ones first. Black Panther is a bit of a sleeper in that people allowed themselves to power creep Black Panther out in their brains, but in reality, a lot of people will tell you he stayed relevant the whole time, especially as ISO started to come out for him, and uniforms. I mean, when we got Urban Jungle Black Panther, which gave him a bruiser version and a tactician version to go with his original tactician version, and he started getting some decent ISOs. By the way, we are going to cover covert tasks in this video too, for those who do not fit into another category. So you'll see Doom over here, and Hybrid, and Blizzard, and Howard, which go, of course, to the collections and everything. So we're not going to do duplicates, but we will do covert task people. So, yeah, Black Panther is somebody who generally managed to stay relevant, especially in, I would say, up to the lower parts of upper tier in PvP. He was really solid, and he did a lot of what he was supposed to do well, and when you started getting ISOs for the daggers and everything like that, he stayed actually really good. He's in a decent place in Marvel Strike Force, and he's considered the poor man's Wolverine in Marvel Future Fight. If you were not able to afford Wolverine, you could go to Black Panther and get nearly a Wolverine out of him. Scarlet Witch, this one surprises me. That was actually a general release hero, and they did it only 0.6 months after Black Panther. Literally 20 days later. Scarlet Witch is another one that got power creeped out, but actually still stayed relevant if you managed to think on her a little bit. She had very interesting outfits, including Transient Scarlet Witch, which I always called Gypsy Witch, and then Modern Switch over here. Was never really a fan of the Avengers. I have fundamental issues with the MCU Quicksilver and the MCU Scarlet Witch because they classified them as not mutants and not Magneto's children. I don't like that, and I have that same issue with the fact that they tried to depower Squirrel Girl in the exact same way. So I was already primed to not like them in this uniform. The movie itself was one of the weaker ones in the MCU, so all around, not a fan of the Age of Ultron characters in here. I do believe I liked Infiltrator, Gypsy Witch, or sometimes called Stripper Witch, as people called it, probably the most over there. She was pretty fun, especially when you started getting more robust AISOs and EISOs. It was fun to go back and see what you could do with her. Rogue was an absolute terror. Every single uniform Rogue ever had, she could have been a terror. General Rogue over here, the first one, still was really strong, and I believe it was on the Absorb Power where she had a chance to stun, or maybe it was the Drain Essence. She was really good. She was good in PvP. Then you got Fam Rogue showing up, which gave her the Blaster aesthetic and the Infiltrator aesthetic. Oh my god, she was so fearsome in PvP at the time, especially when there was Pesty out there, and she would wither you, and she hit so hard. Really, Rogue is one of those characters where Playdom got the power level right. And then eventually we would come up with Modern Rogue, which sort of had the chance to be omnipotent in a lot of ways. She had the chance to gain so many classes. And this was a suit along with this suit here from Magic that were teased, I swear to God, it was like 2 years. We knew about that uniform and this uniform for about 2 years before they eventually showed up. And then I think Playdom used them as filler material. I think they were like, okay, we're struggling to get something out there. You know what? Release the suits. Like, release the Murder Hornets. We got the Magic suit and we got the Rogue suit fairly quickly together, kind of in what I believe was a content gap at the time. But she was really good at all times. Gambit is, again, one of those sleeper ones. hopefully, maybe we can get some kind of a uniform for him in Marvel Avengers Alliance Redux. Maybe nice. So he took a nerf because he was so powerful. He had the ability to just eternally go by setting up a flank and then hitting off of it, and just there were ways of turning Gambit into an absolute monster. I never did it, and I lacked the ISOs to do it at the time, but there is a lot of people who come to the comments of this video and tell you that Gambit was a scourge, that he was much like his girlfriend. Gambit was very, very good. There is even a death incarnation of Gambit that it'd be interesting if we could ever see that. Quicksilver, I mean, really, does Quicksilver need any introduction right now? His green suit was solid, but it was in the era of Bisquick, the scrapper version of Blue Costume Quicksilver, where he single-handedly, until Pesty arrived, changed the face of the game. He made it so that you just couldn't bring infiltrators anywhere. Some people claim they like the blaster version of AAOU Quicksilver. I fucking hate this character in this uniform. I hated him in the movie compared to the X-Men movie. I mean, the X-Men, the Singer version did it so much better than the MCU. And the Age of Ultron Quicksilver, I'm glad I only had to see his face for one movie. I just could not fucking stand that Quicksilver at all. But Bisquick changed the face of the game. Huge, huge power impact on him. Hercules, fun build, good for buffs, good for exploiting them. Eventually would, get ISOs to make him stay somewhat relevant. When he showed up in PvP, you were a little bit scared around the time when Hercules came out and would have reached his levels. Beast would come around and kind of do nothing as regular Beast. He was, he was okay. You were like, alright, well, there's a Beast there. You didn't think it was an easy win, but it was not that threatening. And then this happened. This guy pushed Bisquick aside, said, excuse me, and went to the head of the class as the most game-changing character in the game's history, especially the Infiltrator version of it. If you had tacticians and you were facing that nano-plaguing Heart of Darkness before it was nerfed to be only a 60% chance of hitting, it was about as frightening as Infiltrator Emma Frost would be later in the game with the pre-firing Psychic Tap. Huge threat. Granted, you could change the landscape of the game back to normal. If you killed him, his effect would go away at the end of that round, but, my god, what can you say about that? Up next is Tygra. So, Tygra, I believe, is now showing up in Mortal Kombat, Marvel Contest of Champions. Weird to see her show up all of a sudden like that. Tygra, I kind of felt, didn't get much love, but she's actually really good for bleed teams. And later on, again, with some ISOs and everything like that, she could come to be very good. Now, whether or not, which came first, the chicken or the egg, whether Tygra came first or Cheetah over in DC came first and everything, I don't know, but I'm a big fan of Tygra and Marvel Avengers Alliance. I liked returning to her later on and doing fun things. Wasp is a character that a lot of people just considered very non-threatening, and hopefully we'll get some uniforms for her, sort of the way Marvel Future Fight did in Marvel Avengers Alliance. She is the classic infiltrator in the sense that if you think of games that have debuffers, like, so Final Fantasy 13 had that debuffing class. There was the Synergist, which was the buffing one, and then there was the one that was it Infiltrator? I actually don't even remember, but there was the class that would basically they just trafficked in debuffs, like de-shell and lowering magic resistance, lowering physical resistance. Wasp to me is iconic of that. She's the epitome of the little gnat buzzing around you, just weakening you and weakening you. PKB over on the Avengers Alliance wiki always was a big fan of Wasp, if I remember correctly, and said that there were ways of building her that actually made her quite annoying. She was a terror in Marvel Avengers Alliance 2 in a different uniform because she had like Spider-Man levels of dodging, and she was a huge threat in number 2, the likes of which she did not achieve in Marvel Avengers Alliance 1. Captain Britain, I mean, this guy was scary in PvP. There are still, to this day, huge fans of Captain Britain. Some of them are even on Discord right now and are part of the content team. Yeah, he was really good. He did a bucket of damage with Britannic and everything. He actually took a nerf at one point because he was so strong. Some ISOs later on would give him a bit of a comeback. Never really at the top levels, but Captain Britain was somebody that you could always kind of rely on to do good shit. Black Knight coming in next. Now, I was a fan of Black Knight before the mock version of him came out. When mock came out, he was pretty good, and I had fun building teams with mock. But Black Knight was a lot of fun to build around, and he was an enabler to people like Union Jack who joined in on attacks. And a lot of people kind of forgot about that. And then you could turn Valinor into a quick action with one of the summons ISOs. There was so much you could do with Black Knight, and let's not forget that period in PvP where he was basically invincible for 3 or 4 rounds of combat. He kept absorbing stuff with Shield and Knight, and he just went crazy and took... I mean, you could drop a nuke on that helmet, and he'd be like... He'd just brush it off like, what the fuck was that? I was like, did I just get asbestos on me from the ceiling or something? And then you could kill him, but for 3 or 4 rounds, just crazy bugged. But there was a lot of fun stuff you could do with him. And then the mock incarnation brought in the Eternal Bleeding. Him and the Devourer was a very fun combination for me. Union Jack. Union Jack and Hogun were 2 of my favorite join-in characters of all time. Union Jack is somebody who did what he did ridiculously well. It was one of the first ones to do it. Before there was Rocket, before there was Hogun, before there was Spino, UJ was the one that did it. And I actually did, I believe, a series of videos way back in the day of different team-ups with Union Jack. And one of them was Team Blackjack, which was Black Knight and Union Jack. And I think him and Hogun I might have even did. Again, another one that still stayed quite relevant with later ISOs. Thundra, poor Thundra, unfortunately got tied up in, I believe it was the Fantastic Four rights, because I believe that's the universe that she was associated with. So Thundra was rumored to become a worthy, and whether it was fake or not, there was art coming out saying that she looked good as a worthy. And with that chain and everything, you could certainly see the worthy treatment applying to her. Sadly, it never happened, likely because of the rights issue. And they went other ways. Possibly She-Hulk getting it. Thundra is actually really good. Much like Tygra, this is another one that was fun to build around. And I think I combined her with Starlord because of the Rising Up buffs at one point. And I have Thunderlord, I think is the name of the team up. She had really good ISOs over here. And if you wanted to work on a Rising Up team, Thundra was definitely one of the people you wanted to look at. Again, you had to be a little bit of a thinker to kind of consider her, and go back and give her some love. But truth be told, she was always there. She just kind of got forgotten a little bit. So while we're seeing her, Squirrel Girl. So Squirrel Girl got a bit more powerful when the cosplay suit came out, and her and Howard the Duck would actually be a pretty good team up in PvP. She, again, was one of those ones who came in and was decent, mildly threatening in PvP, but then got ISOs that really jacked up her powers. And how, as a Playdom dev, do you get to decide what this girl's power level would be for somebody who's beaten the likes of like Doom and Apocalypse and everything? The game always had fun with Squirrel Girl, which was cool. She was written well in the game, and actually, I've seen some people do some pretty interesting PvP builds with Squirrel Girl that made her, a little on the threatening side. If there was ever an infiltrator version of her, I think it would have been quite nasty. Dr. Voodoo. Now, Dr. Voodoo, people probably forgot because it didn't last that long. Dr. Voodoo was very good. And he was very good in PvP. I mean, you had a blaster that had a tremendous heal. The weird things that he could do about skipping turns and granting turns because of the Evandora compatriot, all that stuff. He's now in Marvel Future Fight. Kind of nowhere. I have him at T2, but I never use him. I don't know if he's any good over there. He was phenomenal when he first dropped, and you really had to consider him when he was on the field in PvP on the defense, and if you were using him on offense, he was a lot of fun with the turn fuckery that he did. I believe I did a team up with Spiral on Voodoo and called it the Voodoo Spiral, which is one of my more favorite team names that I ever came up with over the years of Marvel Avengers Alliance, was Voodoo Spiral. Volstagg. Volstagg was a covert task, and he was to go along with the general release of Fandral. Fandral and Volstagg, the Warriors 3 meta, it lasted a while, and the tanker took a nerf, so the tanker allowed the agent to participate in a lot of ways with the Warriors 3, similar to the Guardian badge. And it made the team up ridiculously powerful. Volstagg just lived and lived and lived, and if you couldn't get past Volstagg, Fandral would murder your face. Just that Errol Flynn chandelier circus with you'd clean the bleeds, and then he'd drop this on you, and you'd be bleeding again. And then one of them would do the elixir of recovery, and the agent would have the mug, and it would just be like, oh my god, get me out of this battle. First of all, Volstagg could do a lot of damage himself. The AI didn't always do it well, but Volstagg and Fandral were a huge threat at the time. And moving forward, we're going to have another theme threat in Gomorrah and Groot. So we started getting this Guardians run over here, where we started getting, a bunch of the Guardians of the Galaxy characters, and whether or not you got the movie one or the classic one. So, Rocket came in as classic or bellhop. Gomorrah came in as classic, or although I think some people call her Godslayer, or that's the name of the sword. It's called Classic Gomorrah, but maybe there was another name for it. I forget. Drax was classic, but then Star-Lord was movie, and his alts were the ones that were the bellhop. They did strange things with that. They messed up what was... Well, I wouldn't say messed up. It was probably very intentional, but they changed up what was the thing. Gomorrah, with the way Doom worked at the time, And, later getting that infiltrator version of her, and the fact that Groot... Excuse me, you like a little bit here. Groot just enabled everybody to live forever and ever, and he lived forever, and you think you'd kill him in sapling and back and sapling and back. Man. So right after we get done with the Warriors 3 meta, we have to deal with the Guardians meta. Gomorrah and Groot, when combined, were really, really good, because Groot just made everybody live long enough for the setups to pay off. Medusa, I have a friend, Jimmy, still on Facebook, who really used to like Medusa and used to like to shoehorn her in wherever she could. She was a very, very tanky infiltrator, and she was a bit of a threat, but sort of not really. Now, I love Gorgon because Gorgon was fun to build teams around. Again, somebody who liked rising up, and he was also one of those rare characters whose counterattack or join-in attack, extra attack like off a flanked, was the AoE. And that was cool. Until, obviously the Scutcheon ISO, the Elite ISO. Now we're getting into some really, really fun shit over here. Molly Hayes. If you guys don't know by now how I feel about Molly Hayes, you haven't been watching my channel for... Get off the cord, stupid cat. You haven't been watching my channel for a hot minute. Molly Hayes was, to me, one of the strongest characters Marvel Avengers Alliance ever had. She is actually considered a mutant in the game. She worked with Mark of the Brotherhood. Mark of the Brotherhood would allow her to accelerate the raspberry into the tantrum if you wanted to, and you did it well enough. Unlike Cannonball, who suffered when he was accelerated, Molly did not. And Air Pressure, Invisible Woman, and this cat is driving me up a wall. Air Pressure, Invisible Woman, and Molly Hayes made you want to quit the game. She was such a nightmare because of the way stamina was at the time. Eventually she would take a huge nerf to, well, everybody took a nerf to stamina when it became such a big part of PvP. But Hafe and Molly Hayes, or Invisible Woman Air Pressure and Molly Hayes, was pretty much all you needed to run the gamut in PvP. You could run them on defense and they were gods, and you could run them on offense and they were gods. And if you had things like the Cube or the Scroll of Uncle Bob, you were the Mystic to protect them for the first couple rounds if you didn't have Air Pressure. I mean, it was frightening to see her. She only got better when some of the ISOs that were released for her, like her equipping the Elite ISO, what I could do with Molly Hayes with the Emerald Prism, the Eating Candy ISO. I mean, I got an embarrassing video that I uploaded to YouTube from a Twitch stream of Molly saving the day eating candy. She saved me from a lot of stupid decisions. Carolina Dean. I loved Carolina Dean when she was released. Even though Molly Hayes was perhaps my favorite runaway, and her and Nico introduced a lot of us to the Runaways and started making us look them up. And then we got that wonderful series, which is actually still going, thank God. I mean, Cloak and Dagger got canceled, but we still have the Runaways to look forward to. And I still need to watch Season 2, actually. Carolina Dean is a sight to behold. She is really, really strong when you set her up right. And what she could do with Lucy in the Sky and Empyrean Flare is enough to make your eyes roll back in your head. Much like Moonstone, if you did it right. I had some fun team-ups with Carolina Dean, including Carolina Dean Destroyer, which was Destroyer and Carolina Dean, and feeding them a lot of energy to buff them up. Kate Bishop was... Okay. I'm going to step out of character, quote-unquote, I don't have a character for any of this, but again, if you catch my videos for months or years or weeks or whatever, you find that I don't really ever talk bad about Playdom devs. That I'm not a bootlicking fanboy for them, but I don't dunk on them like a lot of people did back in the day. I had a rather neutral opinion of them, and the opinion's gone up in recent years because we have two of them on Facebook, and we got to see some inner workings of them and everything. I have a lot of respect for them because, let's face it, they built an amazing game that we're crying to get back. And that shows you how good they were. But what the fuck were they thinking with Kate Bishop? She worked for like a week or a month after we got her. And then never worked until, what, the last minute that the game was alive? I mean, that passive, that returning arrow passive that she had, where she would start off the round shooting an arrow into the sky and it's supposed to loop back and do random damage and, whenever. It worked for like 36 seconds. And then it spent years not working. Why? I cannot understand why Playdom never fixed that. To me, as a non-dev, and this is where maybe Goofy can shed some light, or some other programmers, how do you have something working when the character's new and tuned correctly? It works for like a month and then you fuck it up, but then you never go back and fix it. To me, it seemed like it was a 30-second fix in the code. Revert code. And then she's working again. Why it never really happened until the game was on its last legs, I don't understand. But her and Heroic Age Hawkeye were quite fun together. And they actually made a bit of a showing in PvP. And they were kind of annoying when Kate was working. But then they broke Kate. And then it was really fucking stupid to bring Kate anywhere other than the flight deck. I mean, she still did okay without the random arrow. But yeah, poor Kate. I never understood why she got broken and then never fixed. Quake, much like Avalanche, was a ground-based attacker. Again, a little bit of a fun character to work with, but not the strongest. But she's a beloved character from the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. series. Everybody loves themselves some Quake. And in Marvel Strike Force, she was an original high threat. She's faded a lot now, but she was super threatening when Strike Force first had her. Spider-Gwen, Spider-Gwen. What can I say? Not one of the better spiders we had. Didn't really show up, although she's quite good in the Into the Spider-Verse movie. Spider-Man 2099, one of the better Spider-Mans that we got. He's the almost rated R, high PG-13 of all the spiders. I think it's What the Shock. I loved watching the animation that's built of this ability, because it was like he was basically just chomping a hole in your head. Just jumping on your head and having the jaw strength to pierce your skull and suck your brains out. It was one of the more violent abilities in the game, and I loved every bit of it. He was good. I really did like Spider-Man 2099. In Future Fight, a lot of people consider him good, especially the uniform for him. ASG, Amazing Spider-Woman, or eventually, very quickly afterwards, the suit that turned her from woman into girl. Interesting, we reversed aged her. PvP Scourge. A lot of people have probably forgotten that she was really good in PvP. Before Hafe got nerfed, after Stamina came into play and took Molly out, I teamed up Hafe with ASG, and she was so good that Playdom nerfed her and made her basically unusable. Now, she did do some crazy things. I forget, there was something maybe with the magnetic where she was really like interrupting or countering attacks that she shouldn't have. Like she could see stealth or something. I forget what it was, but she was bugged slightly on the, hey, she's a little overpowered side. But then they didn't just fix the bugs, they absolutely put her in the shitter. And she wasn't fun anymore. Kamala Khan. Kamala Khan is one of those ones you initially think you want to hate, but then her personality takes over and she's just hard to hate. I have developed a newfound respect for Kamala Khan in more recent years, and the new Avengers game we're getting at the end of the summer, she's going to be featured heavily. She's a lot of fun in Strike Force. Other than summoning Lockjaw, which was a huge, huge fan moment for me to see Lockjaw appearing in this game, she didn't do much, but in Strike Force, she's pretty solid. In Future Fight, I don't think she's anywhere, but she's one of those characters that's a modern retelling of a character, and is, we're stuck with Kamala Khan. She's not going to go anywhere. Fortunately, her more modern iterations have her better. She just didn't really do that much in Marvel Avengers lines. Fucking Elsa. So after Amazing Spider-Girl got nerfed, Elsa was my go-to with Hafe before Hafe took the big nerf. She did really, really well until anti-magic meta showed up with everybody going and pulling out the Hexenjäger and the Deb. She was really good in PvP at the time. She was a blaster, but she still could do a lot of good stuff. The double tap was strong. The blazing boomstick was strong. Interesting B-52's bouffant haircut and everything. Kind of struck us as goofy at the time, but she was a very, very strong character. And it's a shame she didn't get nerfed really, she just got countered, is the best way to put it. People came up with better counters to Elsa. And actually, I don't think they were countering Elsa. I think they were countering other points of the meta at the time, but Elsa just happened to get swept up in it. I was a huge fan of her in Marvel Avengers Alliance, and she was speed meta in Marvel Future Fight until Kid Kaiju took it from her, and she's also very, very good in Marvel Strike Force on what's called a Supernatural team. So, now that we've done the general release characters that we know of, we'll have to come forward a little bit to talk about Faiza, who I believe was the actual last one. I mean, do we even really need to talk about her? A lot of people were like, Faiza who? And people got angry at it, and they thought it was very modern, SJW-ish because of the name. I don't care. I never delved in that kind of controversy. She was a beast. I mean, what Hafe used to do, Faiza could do, and she was so strong. On her wiki page over here, people I wonder what would happen with her if she ever got dedicated ISOs. I do wonder that. That would be interesting. Yeah, her and Cloak and Dagger, her and Spitfire. She was Queen Bee in the end of the game over there the last few months, and she knew it, and poor Hafe is just crying in the corner, absolutely emasculated that he's semi-useless now, and then Faiza just comes by and shanks him with the sword and continues. So, for the ones that we missed, we did Squirrel Girl, Moon Knight. Moon Knight gave us the wonderful Vigilantes toolkit, which was great at first, and then it got nerfed, and then it got fixed again. Weird on that. The Vigilantes toolkit was fun to build. He had this interesting thing where he would randomly switch personalities during combat, and he could go from himself to Captain America, Spider-Man, Wolverine, Khonshu, and it sort of changed his abilities. He, especially when he got some of his ISOs, actually showed up in mid-tier PvP and did fairly well. Fun character. I liked him in Marvel Heroes also. I did have him unlocked and used him. But, decent character. Not the worst. Not the best either. Sunfire, I think people wanted to get more out of Sunfire, and they just couldn't. He did have the capability of getting some really good punch-out damage, and we also got the hand of Cat Gut Sushi, or Kagatsuchi, at the time, which was an interesting weapon. Pretty decent, but it required setting it up a little bit. Shayna was this odd little Swiss Army knife that could do so many things in her multifunction over here. I think people liked playing her. I mean, she was not the most overtly sexual character, although she does show a lot of skin. But she was really a fun character to play, and she worked well with Kraven and some others. Obviously, Kazar. She's okay, and she was an infiltrator too, which spiced her up a little bit. Morbius, oh man. Morbius was a lot of fun to work with. Him and Blade did some good stuff. I did a video on YouTube of him teamed up with Kraven, and my team name was called Kraven Blood. Craving Blood, Kraven Blood. There's a bit of a pun there. That, along with Voodoo Spiral, is definitely one of my favorite ones, especially later in the game. Early on, I had the Torch of Liberty, which is Human Torch and Captain America, because it's what always, when people would start the game, they would get a Human Torch, they'd get a Captain America. And Up the Irons, which is Iron Man and Iron Fist. Again, beginning of the game stuff, Iron Man reference there, but Kraven Blood was one of my favorites. Morbius is really good. If you can handle the fact that he could negatively affect himself, Morbius is a lot of fun, and he's definitely a character I can't wait to play with at full power again. Deathlok, it was nowhere. She had the bug sprite for a while where it kept changing where the mechanical arm was. Not much to write home about her. Moondragon. So we just want to admit, yeah, Moondragon is not available anywhere else. I can't really speak on Moondragon because we got her so close to the end of the game. I don't think people could really figure out what they wanted to do with her yet. I just don't remember Moondragon well enough to talk about her, other than the fact that I called her Vija because she reminded me so much of the character in, I think it's the first Star Trek movie, the semi-robotic character kept saying Vija, Vija, and it's actually in reference to a satellite. Sorry, plot spoiler there, but it's in reference to some lettering that was on a satellite, and she just reminded me of that. Knight America, oh man, this dude. Knight America he had to get fixed at one point. What he could do when he could do the, what was it, inspiration? Oh yeah, oh boy. Inspiration, where buff actions have no cooldowns and everything. So Black Cat, Black Cat, who fell off the face of the earth for people. Nobody really cared about Black Cat anymore. Although Claw Scrapper, Black Cat was always very good. What would happen is people would stroke and 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 stroke, 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 and then nerve chop and do damage that made Molly just sit up in bed and go, holy shit, what a nightmare that was. You could unlimited stroke of luck and buff yourself to proportions that the Emerald Prism and any other combination in the game could not reach, and then nerve chop somebody, and the numbers were disgusting. And you could actually try and do it in PvP if you wanted to, but at that point we weren't dealing with PvP because they knew the game was over. So mostly it occurred in PvE, but my god, Knight America was so much fun to try and come up with broken-ass teams with, where you could use that inspiration to your advantage and do just crazy things with. This is at the time at like the height of my video making, the height of my streaming and everything like that. we just used to have endless fun with this guy. Unwrapping him and seeing what he could do was like the stupid Nintendo 64 kids. And just slapping away at the box, screaming Nintendo 64. I mean, yeah, the dude was so strong. I mean, he did a good amount of damage himself. You were seeing him in, the PvP preseasons or the fun seasons and everything like that. But man, this guy was crazy, and it is good night, sweet prince. 2 years later. I swear, every time I face another Knight American PvP, it feels like my parry proc's like it's supposed to, 15%, but the opposing Knight feels like it's 75%. Yeah, that's always people felt that, and that comes from, oh, that's right, yeah, he was the Scrapple-tater. Yep, the Land of Opportunity, gained Valor. Him and Black Knight could be fun together. I'd love to see if we could do a Eternal Night or Knights and Knights. Night in America? Maybe I did do that at one point. I forget what team ups I came up with him, but that's another one I'm looking forward to getting my hands on again and being rather greedy about it. So there we go, guys. That's honestly the last category that I can think of for the characters over here. We've dealt with everything. And we got to cover covert tasks along with general release. In the covert task one, just briefly, I would say Knight America, Morbius, and Volstagg are top 3. Doom, we don't count. He's a lockbox. Volstagg really enabled the meta. Morbius is underrated, and if you don't have to really think that hard to give him a good team. Knight America was broken. So that would be my top 3. Moon Knight for a bit, and actually a well-built Squirrel Girl with the right ISOs could probably round out my top 5. And in terms of the rest of the general releases, it's probably tough, but more of them occur. There's so many. Rogue was super good. Gambit, a lot of people use successfully. Quicksilver as Bisquick was amazing. Changed the face of the game. The first one to do it as a scrapper. Then the pesty version of Beast would take that crown and then end the game with as literally the biggest game changer. Although people would probably say, well, maybe Faiza and Cloak and Dagger and Spitfire. I don't think they're game changers. They just did what they were supposed to do super well. Beast changed the game. He broke the rules of the game, essentially. So, Rogue, top 5, Material, Quicksilver, in the blue suit, top 5, Beast, in the Pestilence suit, definitely top 5, probably number 1. I said good things about Voodoo for a while. Fandral was strong when it was a Warriors meta and then faded, but with the Scroll of Runamaroth or Pesty, Fandral was still massively threatening because of Flinting Circus. Gomorrah had her heyday. Groot was a very good enabler. Molly is probably top 3 for me, behind Bisquick and Pesty, and she could almost maybe fight Quicksilver for the number 2 spot. She again was a huge game changer that it made it so you needed to get rid of air pressure or penetrate to Molly or exhaust her at an utmost certainty over there. So whether you were dealing with Hafe or air pressure Invisible Woman, you knew you had to get to her between the tantrum or between the raspberry and then the tantrum. You just had to do it. And you knew that if you couldn't do it in time, you just had to sit there and hands off the keyboard and watch yourself die. I loved Carolina Dean. I'm not going to say a lot of other people did. Kate, I don't know what the hell Playdon was thinking over there. And then these two really were nowhere. Spider-Man 2099 was very good. ASW as ASG was super good. Very meta in PvP for a while. Got nerfed out. Lost her spot. Kamala was nowhere. And Elsa was also super good in PvP until Anti-Magic and the Deb showed up. So top 5, I'd probably have to say Rogue, Quicksilver, Beast, Molly. Not necessarily in that order, but that's 4. It's so hard to pick between these two because they were just about equal in the amount of time that they were valid. I'd probably have to give it to Elsa because of the fact that she could do magic stuff. She was able to penetrate like Faiza and everything, which became popular at the end. So that's my top 5. The releases there. I'm not doing Gomorrah the justice she deserves, or Groot really, uh, or Voodoo, and I realize that they're still top 10. Union Jack definitely breaks the top 5 in PvP. Excuse me, PvE. Huge PvE character there. And he did pretty well in PvP for a long time. And Black Knight, barring when he was bugged, fun in PvE, fun to make teams with, fairly solid in PvP. And of course, Captain Britain is top 10 material over there. Wasp is one of those ones that some people could build her well and make her very threatening. Tygra is always... a lot of these general release characters, none of them are real trash. If you look at the list, Kate was broken into trash. Spider-Gwen's semi-trash, and Quake is semi-trash, but their general releases were really, really strong, and it's good to see that Playdom did that, because it means if you had the CP, at least you could keep up with the Joneses easily, rather than like falling behind in Spec Ops, or not being good at PvP, or having crap luck with the lockboxes. You needed that, and a lot of games would not do that in this day and age. They would not make so many of the just general release characters easy. You'd have to pay now, like in Strike Force, or work ridiculously hard to get the orbs of them, or go through some jank-ass chain of stuff in Marvel Future Fight. Here, Marvel Adventures Online, Playdom's like, you got 90 CP? Yeah. Have Quicksilver. Have Captain Britain. Have fun. See you kids later. Don't stay out too late. Alright guys, that's it for me today. I'm signing off. Peace out.